Hello everyone, bringing you another recommended reading video today, and the reason for this following hot on the heels of the previous one is when digging out the book for that review, I also dug out this, and this is called Up, a National Service Scrapbook by George Forty. Now, George Forty produced quite a few reference books of the British Army, and this is a good one. I like it. I found it very interesting and informative. I'm interested in the time period, the National Service era post-war, and if you're also interested in that, I can highly recommend picking up a copy of this. It's a photo-heavy reference book, as these George Forty books are. There is some text as well, and we're going to have a look through this in some detail now, which will hopefully inform you on any decision to purchase this. I certainly recommend it. I found it to be a very useful reference. So we're going to have a look at this in some detail now. So here we have it, called Up, a National Service Scrapbook by George Forty. George Forty did produce quite a few of these books, which are photographic references. Basically, they do have some text, but they're primarily photographic references, and there are some very interesting photographs in them. And this obviously is particularly interesting if you're interested in the National Service era of the British Army. So we open this up here. See troops departing on board an aircraft carrier there, and then we have the contents here, and we get a good overview of what the book will cover. Obviously, you've got the initial first few days of national service, basic training and so forth, learning a trade, and then more details of exactly what was going on once you'd actually been assigned to a unit and were deployed potentially. Also a little bit on officer training as well, and we'll just have a flick through and have a look at the various different contents of the book, the various different sections, so you can see exactly what is covered in some detail. So we've got an introduction here. There is a little bit of text at the front here which talks about national service. Rather nice here, having the reproduced enlistment notice and so forth. I do have an original one of these, which is rather nice to have. So various details there at the start before we get into the sections dealing more with the photographs. So you've got the initial enlistment here, as you can see, covered in quite detailed photographs there. There's some good captions to these as well. Always rather like this, the contrast between obviously civvy coming in and then provided with uniform and so forth there. And then you've got the various details of basic training here. I won't flick through exhaustively every page, but passing out at the end here. And you've got some lovely group photographs here reproduced within the book, which are rather nice. And then troops on the tide, obviously life on board a troop ship. And then time going spare, go by air. Quite an interesting little detail section here on air transport as well. And then with units, so we've got some photographs here of men after they've actually been deployed to a unit and what they would get up to in the field. Some rather nice humorous photographs reproduced here, as you can see. You can see all sorts of different theatres, of course. There's quite a lot going on in the 1950s and early 1960s when national service was a thing. Well, the late 40s through the very early 1960s. So quite a lot of variety there. Carry on flicking through here. We have the section on obviously commissioned officers. You could end up as a national service commissioned officer. So some details there. Officer cadets, obviously interestingly with the cuff knot. Detail of that added onto the battle dress uniform there to denote cadet officer rank. And training exercises here. This is a very nice section to show some examples of troops on exercise in the 1950s. And then the real thing, of course, deployments. So we've got career here. A nice photograph that showing the white neck square being worn with the combat uniform in career. And Malaya, of course. Some really excellent photographs from this time period. And then barracks life. Again, quite varied from that point of view, but also with obviously encampments, bashes in the jungle as well. A little bit on the food that was provided at the time. Obviously catering in the field as well. And faraway places with strange sounding names. Excellent title for this section, which gives a little bit of an overview of where troops were deployed to. Parades. And then we skip further forward through here. We have some further details on training, adventure training here. And some details of naffy provisions at the time as well. And then other havens, which is rather nice. Obviously the other options soldiers had to go and get a bit of rest and recreation. And entertainment carries on into this section here, as you can see. Boozing, a very important part of a soldier's life, of course. And then finally through to demob, and you have a little bit of information on that at the back here as well. So some slightly more candid photographs of here as well, as you can see. So overall, there are some really excellent photographs in this. Obviously that wasn't the most in-depth flick through, but I don't want to take up too much time in this video. Hopefully from looking through this, I've always rather liked that photograph on the back cover as well, just to highlight that one. But the book itself is an excellent reference if you're interested in the National Service era, the British Army. It doesn't just detail the basic training and so forth, which is what a lot of people focus on in terms of National Service. They think of what was recreated in Ladd's Army, the basic training part of a National Serviceman's stint. Obviously that wasn't all of it. That they were deployed, and obviously many of them unfortunately ended up getting killed in action. But you had Malaya, Korea, obviously the British Empire was still very much a thing at the time, so they could be deployed all over the world, and obviously they were, and that's nicely illustrated in this book. It's a very good reference from that point of view, and as with all of the books I show in this series, it's one I would recommend picking up. It's definitely worth having, and it's an excellent photographic reference if you're interested in this era of the British Army. So I hope you found that interesting and informative. As I say, I highly recommend this book if you're interested in the National Service era, the British Army. It's a very useful reference book, and many of the other George 40 titles are as well, and we'll probably have a look at some of those in future videos going forward. If you'd like to see those and other future uploads, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. And as ever, a massive thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It's greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.